Hey, Soul Warriors, this is Jessica Noel. I'm coming at you with episode 3 of my podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about purification, God-given spiritual gifts, and miracles. So, as you start to move forward on this path with this new perspective that we talked about in the last podcast, where we're using the things appearing in our life, be it a rejection, abandonment, maybe there's a difficult, challenging person or someone that's angry, or maybe it's something meant to talk about that last time, something where something is really unfolding very, very slowly. All of those things, challenging person, somebody that's angry often, things unfolding very, very slowly, you having to wait for some, all of those are going to be teaching patience, right? So again, look for what is this presenting itself in my life to teach me. As you start to do that and you start to unravel these limiting beliefs and you start to switch out of the default programming and into manual mode, you start to choose your responses, you start to shed those past pains, those past beliefs that got stored as a result of the way that you perceived what was happening, you're purifying yourself. So that is the path of evolution and purification. Okay. So really learning and incorporating all of the wisdom of what is this in my life to teach me? What could be an alternative explanation for what that was that happened a couple of years ago that was super traumatic for me? Because see, we're storing things the wrong way a lot of the time. We're taking the information from the experience that we had, if it was traumatic, if it was painful, if we got rejected or abandoned, and we're storing it to mean something that it doesn't actually mean. If it was here to teach you something, then that's the way that you need to go back and restore it, right? And that's what it was here for, to teach you something. It wasn't here to make you realize that you're not worthy, that you're not good enough, that you're never going to find the right person, and all of these other beliefs that might have gotten placed there subconsciously. And again, a lot of times this happens subconsciously. You're not trying to put that belief in there. Sometimes it can even be a belief about God that gets placed in there, about a higher power. For example, if someone feels like a situation was guided, a relationship, for example, it really felt like that's what you were supposed to be doing. You're supposed to be in a relationship with this person. Maybe you even got direct guidance about it. And then maybe it ended terribly wrong. You know, it was very painful, very traumatic, maybe even abusive. When that type of thing happens, there can be an accidental storage in the subconscious that you can't trust your guidance. And that's not what it meant, right? It wasn't that you couldn't trust God, you couldn't trust your intuition, that part of you that is soul, that energy of the universe. It wasn't that you couldn't trust that. It was that you were supposed to have that experience. It was supposed to teach you things. Okay, so that's very different than storing it as that somehow it was your intuition was off and you can't trust that anymore. If it was here to teach you something, and it was, what did it teach you? Trauma is a very powerful teacher. Pain and trauma get your attention like nothing else does, right? So sometimes we're meant to go through that. Sometimes it's to strengthen us. Sometimes it's to teach us very specific things. And sometimes it's so that we can turn around and teach that to others and maybe prevent some suffering, or maybe guide them through how to get out the other side. Maybe all of the above. Okay. Good. So this is all purifying you. So this is all leading to purification, evolution, and that's going to help you to see or perhaps activate your spiritual gifts. So what are spiritual gifts? Oh my gosh, there are so many. You know, in the yogic tradition, they are called siddhis. So siddhis are these gifts that start to unfold. And like I said, sometimes they're active since childhood, and sometimes they start to activate somewhere along the spiritual path. But they will definitely activate along the spiritual path, no question. I've seen it for many years now. Your clairs, your spiritual perceptions. I touched on that at the last podcast. Clairaudience, clairvoyance, clairsentience. Those are some of the main ones. There's other ones as well. But those are like clear seeing. So you're seeing in your mind, you're seeing in your third eye, your mind. Maybe it's like images, a movie that's playing. It can be a lot of different ways. Some people see that out with their physical eyes as well, those colors and things like that. So even if you just close your eyes and you're seeing colors moving, guess what? You got some clairvoyance going on. It's that simple. It's really that simple. And that can just be developed. It really can. So that's one of the things I'll be teaching here pretty soon is an intuitive development class to help you to develop those things that are either not activated yet, we can activate them, or that you like to have more of, you'd like to expand upon them. And clairaudience is clear hearing. So that usually is you're hearing something in your mind. It might be your own voice. It might be a voice of someone else. If it's somebody that is past, then you're actually experiencing mediumship, which is really interesting. We could talk about that in another episode when we go more in detail with these spiritual perceptions. And then clairsentience is something that people that are consider themselves as empaths have, right? That's when you're feeling things. You might feel someone else's pain. You might feel someone else, whether that be emotions or physical pain, or maybe you're just having sensations through your body, tingles, chills, those types of things. So those are perceptions that will activate if they're not already along the spiritual path. And you might not have all of them. Some people do have all of them that activate, and some people are born that way even. Other people have some that are primary, maybe just one in particular. So that's okay, whatever it is, it will work for you. I like to compare it to singing. So people that are really talented and gifted at singing, like that's their thing, that's their gift, like that's how they were born, right? And everybody can learn to sing and they can get better at singing, but some people are just born to be these like profoundly amazing singers. And I compare it to that because I feel like with the spiritual perceptions and the God-given gifts, it's a similar thing. It's like you just have it, you're meant to have it, you're meant to use it to help others. And that's why it's there. And not everybody is going to have it in the same way, right? It's not going to be maybe as developed or as thorough, like specific. And so we just use what we have and we help others with that. Some people have a real gift for holding space for others and making others feel very safe to talk about things and to share things. And that's a gift as well. So it doesn't mean it's all spiritual perceptions. So some people, yes, they have these activated since childhood. I have a friend, and I don't know how many friends that I have like this, but hers feels very, very similar to mine. And she started getting messages and realizing that she was very much a channel, very much had all these perceptions and these gifts activated when she was 3. And she would give people messages and stuff like that at 3 years old. And I had a similar experience actually. So and let me back up and say that right now I practice with many different services. So I spent a lot of years as a counselor, several years actually as a counselor, not a lot of years, several years. And I worked in a variety of settings and I have education in that. So I'm trained with that. I've had licenses with that. And I also have learned all kinds of healing techniques and I have certifications in different things. I'm also ordained in 2 different spiritual organizations. But I also practiced for many years as solely a psychic medium and healer. So I did some healing and counseling too. And then I bridged into really doing the psychic medium and healing. And so I did that for many years too. And now what I'm doing is I'm incorporating all of it. So I'm using all of it and I'm talking about all of it. And so people can start to choose, what feels right for them. What service do they need? Or if they don't know, we can figure it out together. So I've just really followed the path of where I was guided. So I was guided to do the psychic mediumship and healing for a long time. And then it shifted to doing a lot more energy psychology, spiritual psychology, and a little bit more counseling, really incorporating these different things. And now it's everything. So I'm grateful for that and excited to see where this leads. So back to God-given gifts. I talked about my friend who started giving messages when she was 3. And I actually also started having that experience. So when I was a little older than that, I believe. I was probably between 4 and 6. I would go up to strangers and just start talking to them about, whatever type of suffering they were having, and I'd give them all this information, and then they would start crying. They'd walk away crying. Or I would, in my mind, what I thought I was doing was I would talk to them about someone that they just lost, because I knew who they just lost. I would start talking to them and saying, well, if this person was here, here's what they would say to you, and so on and so forth. And really what I was doing was mediumship. And I had no idea, because I thought this was normal. I thought that this is just how everybody was. And when you're a child, and that's the same thing my friend thought, when you're a child, you just think, well, this is just the way everything is. You don't realize that something's unusual. So as a child, I was aware of my spiritual gifts. I was giving messages to strangers on elevators and in other public places. And, during my teenage years, I think when I started to find out, oh, wow, this is not like how it is for everybody, as a teenager, I kind of shut it down, or at least allowed it to dim a little bit. That's another thing I want to talk to you about, not dimming your light, embracing your God-given gifts. It's easy to do that as a teenager, right? I mean, you're growing up, you're in that stage of development. And then started really embracing it, developing it, learning more about it when I was in my 20s and beyond. So here I am now. So not dimming your light for others. Sometimes these, and I want to say it again, these are God-given gifts. These are gifts that are given to you by the divine, by grace, that are here so that you can use them to help others. That's what they are. So embracing them, feeling gratitude, appreciation for them is so important, and using them to help others. Using them for yourself too, as needed, right? To support your path, and as long as it's in a way that is of service and it's for the highest good. Okay. So sometimes these gifts can make other people uncomfortable, right? People have all kinds of different beliefs about this. There's certain religions even that have very specific beliefs, or certain sects of those, I guess certain groups, maybe we want to say, sects or groups of those religions have certain beliefs that these aren't okay. So some people that have been involved in those particular groups might start to reject their own gifts. They're rejecting a part of themselves. They're rejecting something that God has given them so that they can be of service. So it's really important to look at that. Like, okay, so does that mean that as a child, when I'm 4 years old, I was bad somehow, and that was not okay? It's like, I was born that way. My friend was born that way. Okay, so how can you sit there and say that there's something wrong with that? And when there's miracles that happen, my friend has miracles that happens through her all the time. I have miracles that I experience all the time. A lot of the other people that I work with or associate with, they have miracles happen all the time through their gifts, through allowing themselves to be a vessel for this healing energy and this wisdom to come through. So these things are given by the divine, given by the universe, given by God, to be utilized to be of service and to help others on their path. So yeah, it can make people uncomfortable. Maybe they have beliefs about it. Maybe it makes them jealous. Maybe they're just not sure about it. So guess what? Those people aren't supposed to be on your path then. You cannot dim your light for someone else because they're uncomfortable with who you are. Say it again. You cannot dim your light for someone else because they're uncomfortable with who you are. It's who you are. This is a part of you. So maybe that person will learn from you. Sometimes that person can have direct experiences. Maybe you shared something with them and they're like, oh my God, how would you possibly know that? Or maybe it's like a situation where they experience some sort of healing and that changes everything. I mean, I saw so many when I was practicing like solely as a psychic medium, there would be so many people that I would give messages to that would be skeptical at first. And then as soon as they started getting all this detailed information, they're like, okay, so this is real. And so I always loved that. I loved giving messages to people that were skeptical. It never made me feel, really anxious or stressed, because it's like, okay, well, I'm just going to say what comes through. And then you watch, because again, that's a direct experience. And I keep talking about that. Now that they've had a direct experience, they know, and that knowing is instilled, and then the doubt starts to dissolve. That opens up a lot for them, right? Now, all of a sudden, if this is real, then what else is real? So that was always an amazing transformation to see. And I still see that now because I still do this, pretty regularly. And probably more in the upcoming weeks and months. Okay, so not dimming your light, not rejecting your gifts because of someone else. So maybe they learn from it, like I just described, or maybe it's time to say goodbye because you can't continue to be in a relationship with someone or in a situation where they're rejecting you and who you are. That's going to be so detrimental for you. You need people around you that see you, that love your gifts, that love who you are, and that support you. And they're out there. So if you have anybody in your life like that, you can try to explain, to teach, but don't do a lot of that. If they don't want to hear it, then that just means that maybe it's time to let that go and let other people that do resonate with you move into your life. And some of you that are having your gifts activated, or that your gifts do become more activated, you might start to realize that some of the people that were in your life, they might not fit in the same way anymore. So that can be a challenge because you have to let go. But please understand that as that happens, as these people fall away, which sometimes can happen in our lives, especially on the spiritual path, new people are coming in that do resonate with you. And oh my gosh, is it so much more joyful? It is so much more joyful than any of these other people that were in your life before, because they get you and you can talk to them about anything and everything. And you might talk to them about some real crazy things that you experience, and they're like, oh my gosh, me too. And so it is so joyful to be able to be on that path with, a sisterhood, or, a brotherhood, friendships, and having a little community. So let that come in, but sometimes you gotta let the old fall away first, right? So if you're in a partnership, that's the other thing with a romantic relationship. Maybe you're in a partnership where, oh my gosh, so you're growing, you're evolving, all this stuff is happening for you, and they're really kind of staying where they are. That might start to become too much of a discrepancy to start to connect. So it's really ideal for both of you to be on the spiritual path, but they might not be open to it. So you have to just kind of see how that unfolds. You can't control that if they're not wanting to partake in it. So, I have taught a authentic relationship, cultivating authentic relationships, authentic and soulful relationships workshop series, and I'm going to teach more of those, and that is all underway to expand upon that. But in that, we talk a lot about the soul to soul type of connection, but that person has to allow the soul to soul type of connection to happen, right? So if they're going to stay where they are, sometimes it means that they have to fall away from your life. And one of the things that I said at the last workshop is, or actually at all of them, is try to view relationships as phasic and transitory. And that is definitely not how the majority of the people view relationships. If you start to view it as phasic and transitory, like, yeah, relationships come and go, no big deal. Like, maybe it'll be here for months, maybe for years. I know that that's kind of a crazy idea, because in this country, there's a lot of, like, in many countries too, we're going to be together. We're going to be together forever. And this is like, we're committing, and this is forever. Well, maybe, but I mean, also, I think we're seeing, like, okay, that's really not what's going on. Like, more than half the people are getting divorced anyway. So if you can look at it like, yes, we're committing to that. If you want to get married, fine. Yes, we're committing to that, but we're also going to take it one day at a time and see what unfolds. If you start to look at it as transitory and phasic, then the attachment and all the pressure for it has to be this, it has to be, forever, and you have to be this for me, and all that starts to go away. And then what happens? The relationship can start to expand because you're not putting all that pressure on it, and you're detached from it. Okay, so it's a different energy that you're putting in it. Okay, so I'm probably going to do a podcast. Either I'm going to do a series or start a new podcast on cultivating authentic and soulful relationships, because there's so much information that I think is going to be very valuable for a lot of people. But staying on this topic, We've talked about purification. We're talking about your God-given gifts, really accepting them and embracing them. Look around right now and see, wait a minute, do I have some gifts that have already been at play that I haven't noticed? Because you probably do, or you really might. Start to notice those. And again, on the path, more will become activated, or if you don't really think you have much going on right now that you've been experiencing, then they will be activated along the path. That's part of what happens. We talked also about don't dim your light to make someone else comfortable. You really want to be with the people who are loving you, who are embracing you, who are helping you to evolve, who are accepting you, and who treasure you and your gifts, right? If you don't do that, here's what will happen: pain and suffering. And I don't want you to have any more of that. And I don't want to have any more of that. And I don't want anybody to experience that. It's not necessary. It's really about like getting it sooner. The faster we can get whatever the lesson is, the faster that we can, shift our perspective, the less pain, the less suffering we're going to have. It's really, okay, I'm letting go. I'm allowing things to flow. I'm noticing this. I'm getting clarity on that. And not only is it going to cause pain and suffering, but, to keep those people in your lives and start to dim your light, perhaps. It's also going to be a distraction. You're not going to be able to evolve with who you are, basically, or you're not even able to talk to that person about things that you're experiencing and who you are. Both things are going to result in a distraction from your evolution and pain and suffering. So let's eliminate that. Your gifts, and really stick with those. Have a lot of people in your life that are really supporting your evolution and really treasure who you are. Okay. I also want to talk about, on the spiritual path, discernment between frequency. So when you're looking at like, okay, I want to start, talking with somebody that's a psychic or a medium or a spiritual teacher or, spiritual psychology, whatever it is, definitely with a healer. If you're looking for someone like that, or let's say you're like at some sort of expo or something like that, I want you to discern, because especially when you're new on this path, discernment is so important. There's different frequencies that are operating. There's some of it's not even real, to be honest, right? And then there's different frequencies and which people are operating at. So you want to really discern what frequency is that, and is that the right thing for me? And what kind of energies are they using? Because there's a lot of different energies that you can use. What you want is high frequency, direct from source, direct from God, flowing through that person. This person is here to be a channel and a vessel, and they're following their guidance. Okay, that's what you want. That's the highest frequency. So discerning, this, first of all, like, what do they look like? And it's not like, oh, are they attractive? That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, are they sickly? Are they exhausted? Everybody has bad days, but I'm talking about, like, what I'm saying in general, as you're laying eyes on them. Are they sickly, exhausted? Are they unwell, unkept? Take a look at what they're showing you with their appearance. That's going to give you a lot of information about what kind of frequencies they're dealing with, where they're at developmentally on their path even. And do you want what they have? Do you want what this person has? So if you look at their life, or you look at how they're presenting themselves, do you want that? Is that something that you want to experience? Because maybe it doesn't look very good. Maybe things are kind of a mess or chaotic for them. Well, that's a sign to stay away from that energy, because they're no judgments. They're learning what they're learning on their path. But if you're going to someone for healing and to learn from them and so on, you want to stick with the high frequency ones that are already at a certain place on their path and that are doing well, because they're going to be able to give you that type of energy that you need, right? And the other thing is, are they trying to teach you and guide you to become your soulful self and to uncover your gifts? Or are they creating some sort of dependence where you're having to come to them for all this information and they're really just telling you what to do? Because you want someone that's going to lead you to yourself. And that's what I try to do with all my clients. I'm leading them to accessing their own wisdom, to uncovering their own soulful self, because you know what? You've got all the answers and all the wisdom inside of you. It's just about accessing that wisdom and that knowledge and that healing as well. Sometimes guidance is helpful. So you're telling someone, oh, here's what I'm getting about your life situation. But ultimately, the goal should be they're leading you to accessing that within yourself. So this is going to help you to discern, the frequency of who you're around, groups that you might go to, events you might go to, people that you might seek out for, healing or for any kind of spiritual support. And really, this kind of applies to everything, right? If you're seeking a counselor, you really want to use the same kind of, like a mental health counselor, you really want to use the same kind of idea of like, well, what are they showing you? And that's the other thing. People will always show you exactly who they are and where they're at. And the thing that happens is that often we just don't pay attention to that. We ignore it because we're focused on what do they think of us? Are they accepting us? Sometimes it's that, or other times it's like we have this idea and we really want this so badly. And so we ignore what we're being shown. And that happens a lot in relationships too. So watch, observe, reflect on it later. What is this person showing me? Who have they shown me that they are with their actions, with their words, sometimes appearance too. And that's going to give you everything that you need to know. So all the information is there. It's just about looking at it and paying attention to it. Okay, last thing I want to talk about today. Manifesting miracles and embracing your spiritual gifts. So we already talked about that, about embracing your spiritual gifts. But manifesting miracles and like, what's that about? Like, who is able to provide miracles and who receives miracles? And how come people that are like miracle workers are not having every single person that they see experience a miracle? Like, what's going on? Well, I can give you some information on that. So people that are miracle workers tend to be those really high frequency people that I was just talking about, that they are a vessel for the divine to flow through them. They have given up their will and, in some ways their personality or their life, at least in that moment, they're giving that up because they are a vessel the healing work in the world that the divine is for that. So that's the most powerful miracle worker that there is, right? They're using their body as a vessel, and they've done enough purification and clearing that they can do that in a pretty powerful way. So first is the intent to do that and the willingness and the surrender. Second is going to be that they've purified and cleared enough. But that's a never-ending job. No one's perfect. One of my teachers, he's a God realized master. It's not just that he's had experiences of self and God realization. He's just permanently like that. He still has things, right, that he continues to evolve and grow from. That's always how it is, no matter where you are in your path, enlightened or not, there's always more. Okay, so when I say that they've purified enough and transformed enough, I'm not saying they're perfect, but I'm saying they've done enough to where they can be that vessel in a pretty intense way. And there's always more that they can clear to be even more powerful. And it's power, the most powerful thing that anyone can have, but not from an ego perspective. There's will there. You're willing to have this happen, but it's not the ego will, right? It's not, oh, I'm doing this. Look at me. I'm a miracle worker. I can do all these things. And that's going to stifle it for sure, right? It has to be open-hearted, pure. So, you're going to get this ability to perform miracles if you are pure of heart. And that is the condition. That's the condition that there is placed on it, pure of heart, which means you're doing it purely to serve and to help others. And that's something that, yes, it can be to some extent cultivated, but it's also, for a lot of people, inborn. They are born with that purity and that desire to serve. That's who they are. But again, it can be developed to some extent, at least, and cultivated. Heart can open, and when the heart opens, that starts to develop. So these are who miracle workers are. So that's what I want to talk about first. And I just talked about, like, who are they? What does that look like? Anyone can have a miracle flow through them at the right timing. But these are the people I'm talking about, that, like, the healers in particular, that are doing this day in and day out. And so the other thing depends upon the person's belief that's receiving. So that's part of the answer to the question of, well, how come it's not like every single person that they see, that's experiencing a miracle? Well, the reason why is because several things. One is their beliefs, which I'll talk about in a second, but one could also be that they're supposed to experience this illness or this emotional pain or whatever it is. They're supposed to go through it and experience it. It's part of the plan for their life. It's part of their soul's growth and evolution. Could also be a karmic. They have to experience it to clear something away, to balance something, or for their own evolution and growth. They have to go through this experience. So in that case, it can't be taken away. Person has to live through it. Sometimes it can be lessened. I've witnessed and experienced that. Sometimes you can lessen it for the person. Sometimes it's just going to stay. They have to go through it. So then you just support them through it, love them and support them through it. So the other part is their beliefs. If they don't believe that miracles can happen, then they're not going to experience a miracle. So if you go to a healer and you don't believe in miracles, that, your illness can be rapidly lifted, then that's not what you're going to experience, because your beliefs are going to dictate what you're able to experience. I'll say it again. Your beliefs are going to dictate what you're able to experience. It's part of why it's so important to purify and to release limiting beliefs. So when they come in and they don't believe that miracles can happen, then they're not going to be able to experience that. Or if they don't believe in that practitioner in particular, if they feel like, oh, well, I don't believe that she can do it or that he can do it, then they're not going to be able to receive it from that person. So maybe it's something about that person that triggers them or that makes them feel not confident. That's fine. Go to somebody else that is able to do it. Maybe then it could happen. So it could be that. It can also be that they have some sort of blocks to that specific thing getting healed. So that's why affirmations can be really helpful. I like to have people say affirmations before and after the healing. A friend of mine, she does that too. She has really beautiful affirmations she uses. She's definitely a miracle worker. And, that's going to help them to release those blocks and barriers. And as they're saying it, their intention is saying, I want this healing. I'm going to take it all in. The other thing is that people can integrate certain percentages of the healing. So I experience that a lot. I'll bring through, and I've got all my spiritual perceptions turned on so I can see and I can witness everything that's going on with the energy that's coming through. And I can see that huge amounts of miraculous healing is coming through, like profound things. So that will change a person's life forever, and all this stuff will be healed and everything will be perfect. And so a lot of times that's what comes through. They integrate a percentage of it. So the affirmations can also help them to integrate a higher percentage of it, right? And so they'll integrate whatever they can at that particular time. And that's dictated by a variety of things, including what I mentioned before, their beliefs, whether or not they have to go through this experience for their soul's growth. Maybe though, sometimes there's like another option. Oh, well, they can go through a part of it, but they don't have to go through the whole thing. So it's going to be dictated by all these different things. So what you can do as a receiver, somebody that wants to experience a miracle, is start to open up to the belief that can happen for you, of course. So work on whatever limiting belief you might have around that. Accept where it is. Maybe it's supposed to happen. Maybe it's not. We don't know. Open up to it, ask for it, pray about it, and go to somebody that can bring through that type of energy, and then see where it goes. And also say affirmations to let it all in, to integrate as much of it as you can. And sometimes it can happen in one session. I've done work on somebody not that long ago that she had this huge, or pretty large tumor in her, what was it, her uterus, I think it was. And it was very scary. And so we worked on that, and she went back in for another scan. She'd gotten a scan. They saw that, like, oh man, okay, that doesn't look good. Got another scan. Guess what? It was completely gone. And I saw it dissolve into the wall so that it became empty. And she experienced that too. She went in, got checked, and it's gone. Right? She believed fully. So she's somebody that's actually on the path too. And she believed 100% that was, she understood why it was there. She felt like she was able to see that some of her thoughts and her beliefs and her emotions were creating that to take place, to manifest physically. So she was even able to sense where it was coming from. And then she fully believed that it could immediately be dissolved, and it was. So that's just one example of how this can work. So what you need to do is just work on your beliefs. Go to someone you're guided to if you need a miracle to happen. and see if you can integrate as much of it as possible by using affirmations. Sometimes reading about stories of miracles or talking to people that have experienced them can help you to develop that belief. Oh, wow, I believe that happened for that person, so maybe it could for me too. That can be helpful to start to move into that. When there's fear present, it's harder to do that. So listening to stories, reading about these things can help you to see that it's possible and to really open up to it. Okay. Miracles happen all the time. They really do. Things can change in an instant. There's all kinds of, that energy of, that high frequency energy of pure light, of pure love that can flow through a practitioner. It can even flow directly to a person at times. There are no limits to that energy. The only limits there are to that energy are the ones that we place upon it through our beliefs. That allows things to take place, or it disallows things to take place. So you can see how powerful our mind is and how powerful our beliefs are, which is why I keep talking about it. So that wraps up this podcast. And again, please send me emails if there are some questions that you'd like to have answered. And I can either answer them in combination on the podcast, or maybe it will be the whole topic of the podcast. I so enjoyed connecting with you today, and I will really look forward to the next time. Bye for now.